What is going on, guys, and welcome back to Touchdowns to Home Runs. My name is Bernie. Thank you for joining us today on the Touchdowns to Home Runs show. Hope that your day is going absolutely fantastic. Today we're going to be taking another look at the Toronto Raptors, and we're going to be using an article written by Raptors Republic. I'll put the link for that down in the description below. But basically, they came out with an article that had 6 off-season priorities for the Toronto Raptors, so we're going to be taking a look at those, discussing them. I'll be giving you my opinions on those 6 priorities as well. Just before we do get into the video, if you're wondering what's going on behind me with the background, there's some renovations going on in my house, but I wanted to get a video up today, so just bear with me again on the background. But anyways, let's get right into the video. So the first priority that they have is re-signing President Masai Ujiri. Now, I do agree with this. But as sort of said in the article, signing Bobby Webster on February 4th does give the Raptors sort of some leeway in the way that they're managing their front office. But I do think Masai Ujiri is obviously one of, if not the best presidents in terms of what he does on the basketball side of things, really in the entire NBA. He's sensational. What I really like about Masai Ujiri is just his ability to make moves and his ability to make really good ones as well. Even before the Raptors had won the NBA championship, what was really impressive is, yes, they never got the job done, but they had made the playoffs like 5 years in a row, and 8 years in a row, I think it was, until this year that they didn't make the playoffs. But Masai Ujiri is so good at making sure that the Raptors are a really good team year in and year out on the court, and then obviously not afraid to make that big move, the big splash to get Kawhi Leonard and win the Raptors an NBA championship. But I think Masai Ujiri definitely knows what he's doing, held off on Kyle Lowry, not trading him at the deadline. He doesn't make moves just to make moves. I think that everything that Masai Ujiri, for the most part, has done in his tenure with the Raptors has not only helped them win, but really put them into better positions to win in the future. Now, you know, rightfully so, he's going to be getting some attention from other places. The Knicks have always been, you know, sort of in the mix for him, a bunch of other teams as well. I don't think the Knicks are really going to pursue him much anymore. But that being said, again, the Raptors will have to pay him, but I think rightfully so for what he's been able to do for this organization. The second one is the 2021 NBA draft. Now, this is going to be the Raptors' highest pick in a very long time, since 2016, I think, where they also had the 9th overall pick. But they really have a chance with the Raptors to be able to draft a star player for the future on top of a core that they already have, right? We look at Anunoby, the Gary Trent Jr., which we'll talk about in just a second, and about re-signing him. But obviously Siakam, the list goes on and on and on. But they have, you know, a rare situation where, because they were hurt this year, you know, a bunch of things didn't really go well for the Raptors, that they're in a unique situation where you'd assume they're in the playoffs next year. So this could prove to be, you know, a really big piece for the Raptors' future. You look at where they would potentially get if you draft at a place like 7, 8, 9. Guys like Keon Johnson, Scotty Barnes, all guys who have sort of spoken about in previous draft videos. Keon Johnson is a guy that I really, really like just because of his pure athleticism. He's a fantastic fit for the Raptors. But overall, you like to draft a big man. I think Kai Jones is the only real guy down there that you would probably draft. Let's say you fall somehow into the 6 range, maybe even 6, 7. Moses Moody definitely on the table. I know a lot of Raptors people know that we don't really need a point guard or guard just because of the depth that we have, but Moses Moody is another guy who's a really good piece. But then obviously we got a really good shot to move up to a 1, 2, 3 type position. Cade Cunningham is obviously the guy who stands out, but I've spoken about how Jonathan Kuminga would fit in at power forward or center. Definitely a guy that the Raptors could use, but I really like Green as well in this draft. A guy coming out of the G League who is a fantastic, fantastic scorer. And I'm telling you, if you haven't watched highlights about Jalen Green, after this video, go watch the highlights. This kid scores the basketball. I think the Raptors are at a point now where, even though you need a center, and Kai Jones might not be, you know, in the position that the Raptors are going to end up drafting in, I think you just draft the best player available. That's why I look at Moses Moody if you're 6 or 7, sort of. That's why I look at Keon Johnson if you're 8 or 9. And then I think Kuminga, Cunningham, Green, you're satisfied with all of those guys, I think, if you're in the top 3. Moving on, number 3, the Kyle Lowry situation. Now, obviously, as I was sort of saying before, Raptors decided not to trade Kyle Lowry at the deadline. There were a bunch of teams, 76ers, Lakers, all involved in sort of trade talks around that. But Masai Ujiri, Raptors front office, decided, let's hold off. We're not getting the package that we want. Let's see if there's potentially another option. Now, the other option that the Raptors have now to decide, because I don't think they're bringing Lowry back, is the sign and trade option. Allows you to work around some salary cap things, help some other teams out in that regard, still get your package that you might have got at the trade deadline, but the team gets him in the secured contract. I think given the amount of guards that the Raptors have, Van Vliet, hopefully they re-sign Gary Trent Jr., you got a bunch of other depth in there as well, Malachi Flynn. If you draft a guard, you also got Harris, who should be developing in future years. I don't think you bring back Lowry, just doesn't fit the scheme of the Raptors. But that being said, again, potentially trade for a center if they don't end up drafting one. So there's a bunch of different options here, I think, for the Raptors and Kyle Lowry. Number 4, signing a center. This is their biggest weakness. There's no doubt about it. I think Aaron Baines is a very talented player, was pretty solid for the Raptors. I mean, Birch in there as well was pretty solid. But I think there's enough people out there, either in the trade market, but particularly looking at the free agency market, I think for the Raptors with some money freeing up, that there's some options. I know the one that a lot of people have been talking about, a guy like potentially Kelly Olynyk, an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year, averaged 19 points in Houston this year, which was 24 starts, 27 games, had 4.1 assists, had, let me find the total rebounds, 8.4 total rebounds, and you put his stats side to side to a guy like Anthony Davis, and in my opinion, he was better. He was a much more efficient shooter, just under the points per game. Again, this is all after he went to Houston, but he's potentially a guy to look at. Harrell is another guy who was spoken about a lot, another veteran-type player. Who just gives you a little bit of something extra, I think, on the defensive side of the ball is definitely something that the Raptors could look towards. You know, a guy like Baines, a guy like Birch, guys who have played good for the Raptors, I think you want them just off the bench, and I think to be a real contender, you're not going to be winning with those guys. The 5th one is a healthy offseason. Yeah, healthy offseason, building on that, just a healthy, get healthy by the start of the season. Obviously, a ton of injuries toward the end of the year, and we missed a lot of time from guys like Siakam, but most notably a guy like Anunoby, but also Chris Boucher. A ton of guys missing for the Raptors, especially down the stretch of the season. This Raptors core, I've spoken about it so much, is super, super talented. Anunoby, Siakam, Van Vliet, but we need them all to stay healthy. I think, yeah, that is definitely one of the top offseason priorities. Coming to camp 100% well-rested. Last but not least, Gary Trent Jr. free agency. Now, Gary Trent Jr. is a restricted free agent, but he played phenomenal, especially on the offensive side of the ball, towards the later part of the stretch of the season, especially after he came to the Raptors. He's got the age factor to him. Again, that's why he's a restricted free agent, so you'd assume he is a very, very highly sought-out prospect by a couple of other teams, maybe some, teams who are lower down in the standings this year. So I hope that the Raptors can get him for a fairly cheap deal. $20 million is the number that they have written here. Between 13 and 20 million. I hope it's on the lower side of that, just because I want them to go out if they do need a center. It would be nice to have all the money we can get. I just think that Gary Trent Jr. is a top priority. I think Gary Trent Jr. is a starter next year for the Raptors. I think, he does have some issues on the defensive side of the basketball, but if he can figure that out, I think it's a phenomenal young player and a very good return package in a Norman Powell, who we weren't probably going to re-sign. So again, another great move. I just hope this ends up going well. But yeah, Gary Trent Jr.'s free agency, definitely going to be something to keep an eye on. But anyways, guys, if you did make it to this point in the video, thank you. Let me know your thoughts on these 6 offseason priorities for the Toronto Raptors down in the comment section below. If you did enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a thumbs up, subscribe to Touchdowns to Home Runs for more content just like this. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time.